Welcome to Changelog and Friends, a new talk show from us, your friends at Changelog. Thanks to our partners for helping us bring you awesome pods each and every week. Check them out at fastly.com and fly.io. Okay, let's talk. I think Changelog and Friends could be the new place for backstage.
Yeah?
It could be the new place for game shows.
Ooh, game shows.
It could be the new place for debates.
Code games.
Discussions.
Yes.
Movie reviews? I don't know. Is that too far afield?
Occasionally, maybe.
Maybe every once in a while.
Maybe sprinkled in, not featured. Gotta keep it on point.
Yeah, not a weekly movie discussion, but just like every once in a while, you know? So,
Well, I mean, we want to get Film Girl on, and that's going to be on and Friends, you know? So internally, we call this and Friends, because it's like too hard to say and too long to say Changelog and Friends every single time.
Right.
We just say and Friends.
so we have that part figured out.
Yeah.
Changelog and Friends. We just call it Friends or and Friends. Changelog.com/friends. We got that figured out.
Yes.
Fridays. We got that figured out. Talk show.
Yeah,
Got that figured out.
that's figured out.
Which is a pretty broad umbrella, right? Like,
Yeah.
as long as we're talking, we're on a talk show. Not
Well,
interviews.
that came from a conversation. We were missing out on like this idea to have diverse discussions on this show in particular. So the changelog has traditionally been about other people and their projects.
Yeah.
Not that we want to navel gaze, but we have things to say too, and we have friends to bring in to say some fun things. And it's not always one topic. It's not always a project. It's not always just this one person's one thing. And the show has been a little limited. And so you and I were both expressing our frustration with the format. While we love it,
Yeah.
it is our bread and butter. We wanted some, some steak too. Some potatoes,
Some sizzle.
some veggies, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, the Changelog has always been and will continue to be an interview show.
Right.
You and I sit down with a special guest, sometimes two, but usually just one. And we discuss them. We discuss what they're up to. We ask them what they're thinking about what's going on. And we do that for, 60, 80, sometimes 120 minutes. And it's a good time. And that show we don't want to mess with that formula
Yeah.
because that's what the Changelog is. We like that. Obviously, our listeners like that most of the time. And we don't want to futz with that. But we do want to futz around.
Yeah.
Is futzing around something? Is that a good thing? I guess that's when you're complaining.
I don't know. Sure.
I don't know. I always tell my kid, stop futzing around.
Would you say that our time at All Things Open influenced this at all? Like, do you feel like so just to prime the audience who is not aware, you and I now stand for 8 hours a day when we're at these conferences, where normally you always do anyways. I'm sitting down right now.
I do. I have a standing desk. I stand while I record, which sometimes makes me ready to be done before you are.
Right. Which is kind of what we discovered even so with this conference coverage. So we go to these conferences.
Well, it's nice because you can't stand for very long. Yeah.
Well, keeping it too long, of course. But so we go to these conferences, we stand, we talk to folks in the hallway track, and we probably record 10 or so conversations. And of those 10 or so conversations, maybe 6 get published.
Something like that.
Some of them hit the end of news in other places, but 6 get published on this show. But I feel like that kind of even lended to our desire to want to change up the format a bit, because it kind of gave us some looseness. I don't know how to describe it, but like less straightforward, a new format to play with, basically.
Yes. Room to experiment, room to try new things. I think also just my enjoyment of some of the creative freedom that I've had on JS Party to make up new stuff and try things. We have a lot of recurring segments over there. Some of them fall by the wayside. Other ones are big hits. And it's just, I want to do that with you and with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Changelog has room for that. So I guess some of the confidence or some of the, freedom for us to try this came from our news experiment, because for the longest time, it was just a weekly interview show. Boom, 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 right? Once a week, we ship an interview show for 12 years, 13 years,
14
years. Well, I was trying to think pre-news.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
News started last June, so it's been almost a year now.
Yeah. So 13-ish years then prior to news.
With our fits and starts, because we have a long history. But for the last 5 years, we've been super consistent, right? Like 50 episodes a year. Until we added news last June, which was an experiment, and people liked it. And we did that for 38 episodes in the Changelog feed, just as a special edition. And then we decided to split that out. I guess, maybe we could tell a little bit of that background because you and I were not necessarily.
We kind of buried some of the lead. We didn't share the full story yet, really, what's happening here.
Yeah, we're kind of not of one mind on that. We came to one mind, but we were kind of of two minds.
Yeah.
I was more dramatic and harsh, and you were more like, let's chill this out a little bit. And I think that we came to a middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted news to have its own life because it seems like it deserves it. People like it. It's a different show. I mean, fundamentally, it's quite a bit different than what the Changelog is, right?
Oh, yeah.
In terms of the format, for sure. But so many people who like the Changelog, like news, it seemed foolish to like totally just break it off into its own thing and start a brand new feed, brand new podcast, which is what I was thinking we should do. Was like, hey, let's just split this out, let it live on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, hold on there, bucko. And I'm like, Adam, quit calling me bucko. But
come on, bucko.
But I held on and I thought about it. And I was like, well, can we have the best of both worlds? This is kind of your why not both philosophy, which you've said to me like umpteen times is like, when you have to decide, why not both?
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes the answer is because you can't have both. But in some cases, you just can. You just have to like find out a way.
Yeah, you can. So you should.
Yeah.
Both is amazing.
And so that's what we did. We're like, well, what if we both leave it in the Changelog as just a flavor, a Monday flavor, and split it out into its own podcast for those who either don't like our interviews or more likely just find it different ways. They're not looking for an interview show. They're looking for a news show or something they can listen to in the shower. Maybe you take a 6-minute shower. I don't know.
No one's listening to you in the shower, Jared.
I bet somebody does.
Not a single soul, I bet. If you are,
I bet
if you're listening to Jared in the shower, I want to know.
Holler at you, boy, if you're listening to this in the shower. Not this, but news.
Yeah.
Anyways, a quick hit. Some people just want that quick hit. Even some of our longtime listeners and friends like Quincy Larson admitted recently, like news is the only thing he listens to because he doesn't have that 90 minutes, but he's got 8 minutes.
You heard of this thing, the 8-minute abs?
Yeah, sure, 8-minute abs. Yeah, the exercise video. Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, this is gonna blow that right out of the water. Listen to this. 7-minute abs.
Anyways.
Well, that was the key, though, too. This short format, we wanted to have a news show for a while. Can we go back many, many years?
We sure can.
Just to kind of share how long we've been trying to figure out a way to do this. And sometimes you just got to like sweat the details too much and then you just got to ship it. Jason Cipher.
Oh, yeah.
Remember when we had Jason Cipher? He was going to work with us on this.
That's right.
He's since passed away. We miss him so much, but...
Hey, Jared here in post-production, and I got to thinking, you probably don't know Jason Cipher like Adam and I do. He was this hilarious guy who teamed up with Greg Pollock back in the day to make viral videos in the style of Apple's Mac versus PC ads. But instead of comparing Macs to PCs, the guys compared Ruby on Rails to PHP, to Java, to Django, etc. Here's a quick clip of one such video that shows Jason's sense of humor. Oh, and so Greg is Rails, Jason is PHP.
Hi, I'm Ruby on Rails.
And I'm PHP.
How's maintenance on that app going, PHP?
Terrible. I was up all night rewriting all the SQL because the client wanted to switch databases.
Ooh, that's rough. Hold on a second. Hello? Yeah, I can do that.
What was that?
That was the client. They want to switch databases from MySQL to Oracle.
Sucks to be you. How long's that going to take?
Well, actually, with Ruby on Rails, switching databases is as easy as editing a configuration file and running a script. So I can change from MySQL to Oracle just like that.
Oh, cool. I'll try that then.
Oh, it's not going to work with, what?
No, it's all right. I got this.
Okay, man. Well, I'm done here. I'm heading to the beach.
Are you going to the beach? That's cool. I'm not jealous or anything that you get to go to the beach and I stay here. What? Hello, client? Yeah, it's me, Rails. How's it going? Oh, things are going great here. I finished every single thing you needed me to do in like 5 seconds. Yeah, all of it. Well, I guess a raise would be cool if you want to give me a raise. Sure, I'll take a new yacht. The 87-footer's getting kind of small and cramped lately. Yeah, that's cool. No, that's all right. I mean, if you really want me to, I'll cure cancer.
Have you seen my phone? Oh. What are you doing?
Nothing. Nothing.
We were going to do a version of this, and you and I guess we weren't confident. I don't know. What was the deal?
Well, okay, so I remember what the idea, and he recorded a pilot for us.
He did I cannot find it. I looked so hard.
That idea was, what if somebody just reads Changelog Weekly to you, which is
That's right.
Our weekly newsletter, which is now called Changelog News. They've been merged.
Yeah.
It was Changelog Weekly, and the idea was, what if you just had an audio edition? Just read it. Someone just reads it, which that's a thing now. Like some people just read a newsletter as a podcast companion.
Right.
Not super compelling. But then we thought, but if it's Jason Cipher, who's enigmatic and charismatic, automatic, really funny guy, really fun to listen to. What if we had him just reading Changelog Weekly and like adding his own little flavors here and there? And that was probably like 5-10 years ago. I don't know when that was. Forever ago.
It was forever ago.
He recorded one. I think it was harder than we thought it was going to be. And like maybe just because it was a pilot, maybe slightly not as good as we thought it was going to be. I can't remember why it kind of just stalled out, but we just, both him and us kind of were like, cool experiment, but we didn't really pursue it super hard.
Well, some things just don't take off. I think it was a matter of flow. You know, it's one thing to produce a weekly newsletter, as you know, consistently for years. I mean, probably the most consistent thing of anything we've produced in the last, I would say, almost a decade has been Changelog Weekly.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of work to put together the content, and it's gone through iterations of how it got produced. And I think that was the old way. It was pre-current CMS. So a lot of workflow stuff had to get figured out. And so I think it just fizzled because the uphill battle of anything new that's out of workflow, you know, to bolt on. How do you do it?
Right. Plus you have to justify it in terms of effort and everything else.
Yeah.
Like how does this thing eventually pay off or whatever?
We're also pretty key on brand too, which not to say that Jason was off brand, but he wasn't part of the organization.
He had his own style. He had his own thing.
Right, exactly. But we've been trying to do this for years. We've been wanting to do it actually began again potentially with 2 minutes or less. Remember a couple years back I did a pilot, I'm like, this is the news, 2 minutes or less. Like we wanted something where it was like, you have to listen to this. It's so compelling. It's short, it's informative, it's worth your attention, it's good, and you can't say no to it. If you're a developer that cares about these things, it should attract you.
Yeah. It's like, why not? Like you have to answer why not.
Yeah.
I think the why not with 2 minutes or less that's really short. It's almost like
it was
that
very
should
short.
be a TikTok, not a podcast.
Well, you know, all good ideas begin somewhere.
Yeah.
You know?
And you recorded something like that one time as well, which was, I think, ended up being 3 minutes or so. And it was like 2 stories, maybe 3 stories, and they were just headlines. And then it was like, see you next time.
It wasn't as good as I think what you've come out with, really. I think you kind of began with JS Party and the ability to experiment and how that led to Changelog News. And I think that's, you know, you've gotten more confidence over the years with JS Party and being able to experiment and deliver something compelling that people want to listen to. And so you just translated that same energy. This is my assumption, at least.
Sure.
To Changelog News. And you've brought memes into it, which is always great, right?
They've done studies, you know. 60% of the time, it works every time.
You've brought pop culture in, you've brought clips in from other things, you bring in audio from shows. Every week it's something, it's the same but different.
Yeah. And it's funny, whenever you have a new toy, you just use it and abuse it. And so I've definitely gone in on the sound bites and then kind of like slowly chilled out on them. I don't know if people notice, but I definitely have had the feedback's like, oh, the sound bites are great. But it's like, but dude, sometimes they're too long. Or sometimes there's too many of them. Or I don't get most of them. One guy on Spotify was like, these sound bites are worthless. Unsubscribed or something. It's like, well, sorry, man.
Really?
Yeah, he was not happy about it. I like them. But I've also been like, let's make sure they're super on point. Or let's not overwhelm. Let's make sure they're like dressing or like Garland and not the main show. Mm-hmm. It's like when you get a new programming tool or technique and you're like, ooh, I learned about dependency injection. I'm going to inject my dependencies every time, you know?
Yeah.
And then later on, you're like, dang it, why did I do all of this dependency injection? It's such a pain in the butt in this case. And you kind of just chill out and use it only when it's appropriate. So I've definitely evolved a little bit even inside this first year of news. I think it's getting better, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think so too.
Regardless, it's finding its audience, and both inside the changelog and outside. And then we're like, well, if this goes well, which it has gone well, now we have a Monday show, then we have an interview show. And it's like, what we're really missing is a talk show, a show where we can talk about what's going on. We can have our opinions. We can bring in new friends. We can have recurring guests, you know, because sometimes we have certain people that we love to have on the show more often, but you almost need an excuse to interview them.
Yeah.
Here's an example: is Mike McQuaid from Homebrew. I was just talking with him. He's going to be on a upcoming Changelog and Friends. He's going to be reacting to WWDC stuff with us here in the next few weeks. And I was telling Mike, and he, we've been friends with Mike for years, online friends.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's been on the show a few times, and he's always wanted to come back on the show. And we were kind of like, well, we need like a big Homebrew release or some sort of thing to happen.
Go do something, Mike.
Yeah, go accomplish something already. By the way, he has done something. He's got a new project, which I won't reveal here because he'll probably want to talk about it. But it's like we kind of need an excuse to bring you back on again,
Yeah.
Because that's what interviews are about. Like, we can't just talk about the same thing over and over again. But talk shows, we don't have to talk about Homebrew with Mike McQuaid. We can talk about whatever we want to, or whatever is topical, or maybe something he's super into that's not Homebrew and that we're into. Like in the case of your home lab stuff. There's home labbers all over the place that would love to talk about that stuff. Yeah. It's not exactly an interview, but it could be a compelling, interesting talk show. At least we hope so. And so that's the plan.
I love it, man. I'm excited. I'm excited for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you mentioned the fact that we left Changelog News in the Changelog's feed. And so now we think of the Changelog as 3 flavors of a show.
Yeah.
On Monday, you get your news. On Wednesday, you get your interviews, some deep dive into somebody innovating in some way, shape, or form and discovering their experiences, their journey, their straight line, the technology, how it's shaping things, how it's shifting things. And then on Friday, relax and chill with us. We kind of mix backstage. We kind of mix in some Go Time and some JS Party flavors, the way that,
right,
those have had, rotating
recurring segments,
panelists, exactly, recurring segments, etc.
Regular guests.
Yes. And now we have a Friday show. To even more so, I think, with Changelog itself, the way it has been, the interview show, it's been challenging to release something timely when something is breaking, in terms of news. So I got to imagine at some point on this Friday show, which is still in the works of how it will actually function and form once we edit it and whatnot.
Right.
But there's going to be a place in there for like, hey, what's current for you? So that way we can kind of keep up with the pace at which tech moves.
Yeah, that's the other thing, which news has been really nice for that, because for those who just listen to the Changelog and don't really know how we do it, a lot of times our interviews are delayed. I mean, they're always delayed some. A lot of times they're delayed a while. I mean, we can get a backlog. And of course, your intro and your outro can be fresh because you're going to record those pretty much the day of shipping or maybe the day before we ship. And so you can put something fresh in there. But the content itself has been recorded at this point. The minimum is about 9 days.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we'll turn one around fast just because it has to be turned around fast for to line up with a launch or something. But generally, we record on Wednesdays and we ship the following, has been Friday. Now we're scooting it up to Wednesday. So it's 7 days minimum.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of OS Summit, we recorded 12, 13 things, and that was last week. We were in Vancouver last week as we record this. Today we're recording this one out of schedule, May 17th. So it'll be a little delayed, but generally speaking, the nice thing about Friends, the way we're designing it is it's going to record and ship the same week, like Tuesday to Friday. Mm-hmm. And that allows us to be more a part of the conversation when the conversation's happening and not after the fact. And news has been nice for that because every Monday morning we get to talk to our audience, we get to talk to our listeners and ship it out that same exact day. And so if there's breaking news, or if there's something that we want to say to people or ask people for feedback and stuff, it's just really nice to have that quick feedback loop. Like, hey, I can ask our listeners a question on Monday, and they start sending us emails that afternoon or whatever, or tweeting at us or tooting at us or what's the new one? Skeeting.
A little closer to real time.
Yeah. So the Friends will be like that. Friends will be more topical and timely because we're going to record it on Tuesdays and ship it on Friday, which is going to be a challenge for production, but worth it.
So what, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's all about scheduling, right? It's all about workflows. If we can keep a day open for the work that needs done to get it edited, that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of content creators who are like working 9, 10-hour days, creating the content, editing the content, publishing the content, and then, being there for the follow-up too. It's a lot of different angles to this stuff. Now, we don't want to run a rat race though, do we, Jared? We still want to keep things simple. We were trying to simplify Were we not trying to simplify, or were we trying to add things to our plate?
Trying to simplify,
Okay.
but so far we just added a new show to our weekly plate.
Right.
We think this will eventually be a simplification, but for now it's going to be additional, and we'll see exactly how that plays out.
Yeah.
But it will simplify us, I think, on the back end, which again our listeners don't care about too much, but just on the partnership side, having this changelog bundle to offer to people of these 3 touch points a week.
It's already working out. Yeah.
It just simplifies our messaging to our partners, and it's just too easy to say yes to. Whereas bundling the changelog with GoTime, with Practical AI, etc., now you have different audiences, you have different demographics, you have all this blah, blah, blah. And it's just a harder thing to talk about with people. Whereas this, like on a product offering, it simplifies our business.
Yeah, it does.
So we like that, even though y'all might not care about that so much.
Let's talk about economics a little bit, because we do have Changelog Plus out there.
That's right.
And we did have Changelog News, even though it wasn't called Changelog News. Let's just say it was the news, right? It was the news. Was it Changelog News the whole time? It was, right?
I called it Changelog News, I think, the whole time. We were going to rename it. And we also backed off on that because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But
we dodged a bullet on that one.
The problem is it's such a cool name.
It was a good name.
It's just like, why start a brand new brand when you already have a brand?
Yeah, it muddied the waters.
It did. Like a lot of this was honestly just because we twiddled our thumbs a little bit and like didn't move too fast. Slow down and check yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we kind of changed our minds late on not renaming it.
Because we were set.
We're going to rename it and split it out entirely.
Yeah, we had artwork in motion. We had things in motion. We were trying to buy domains and stuff
We bought a domain.
We did buy it. Okay, we bought a domain even. Like that's
what we do.
We went that far, which is kind of easy, I guess, to buy a domain.
It
Like,
is.
we put effort into the change, and then we decided to not make that change.
We're excited about the name, and it is a good name. It's just not the right name for this show.
We're not going to say the name, right? We're going to keep the name
we're
here.
not gonna
No
say
one's
the
going to
name.
know. Okay, good.
No one's going to know.
Just in case you're going to let it slip, I'm like, what?
Maybe our plus members can find out somehow. Anyways, you were saying we had Changelog plus.
Right. So we have plus out there.
Right.
And we had, and what I'm trying to get to is our plan. Though it may not be pertinent necessarily to our audience, I think it's important to understand how the sausage gets made to some degree. And not just how do the shows work, but how do we finance this entire operation? Because Jared, you don't work for free, do you?
No.
That was a good long delay. I thought I'd be really quick. No. Okay. So we put Changelog News out there for the better part of a year. You said, what, 38 episodes?
Yeah, I think 39 was the first one that was on Changelog on its own.
Right. And this might be a glean into how we think and then also how we operate. We didn't want to have Changelog News be sponsored right away because we were still experimenting. Like, will this survive? Will
Sure.
it thrive? Will it exist beyond this experiment? Will our audience like it? And then once we figure that out, how does it have a long-term story here? And then how do we incorporate the brand partners we like to work with into the mix? And so we have obviously Changelog Plus out there. That's our membership.
Changelog Plus. It's better.
$10 a month, $100 a year, closer to the metal, no ads, directly support us. That's what I love most, honestly. I love the directly support us because it might take us a little bit to get Changelog and Friends to have a couple sponsors. Our plan is to have mid-roll only sponsors, so nothing in the pre-roll, and as many as 2 mid-rolls. This is kind of in the weeds to some degree, but we don't want you to have plus guilt by any means if you're listening to this.
No.
Like, you don't have to be a plus member.
No.
But if you like what we're doing here, then the best way to support us really is to become a plus member.
It is.
Bonus content, directly support us. While we're in this in-between stage between launching this and Friends, this is the 0 episode, essentially. This is just Jared and I sharing with you our thoughts, our plans, our ideas, and where this is going. And if in between now and then, we're going to have probably no sponsors, maybe some sponsors, but you can become a plus member.
Yeah,
the point is.
Absolutely.
Now we do have sponsors on news, and I'm kind of excited about that. That's like 4 weeks in.
Mm-hmm.
We've had Postman and Sentry as sponsors. I just signed 2 deals this week.
Nice.
For brand new names, brand new problems. New logos for Changelog News specifically. And I'm actually working on a blog post, Jared.
Oh my goodness. It's been years.
Check this out. You're going to like this.
All right, share this with us.
Launch with Changelog News.
Launch with Changelog News.
Yeah.
I like that.
So if you have a new feature out there, right? If your org has a new feature or a new thing happening, launch that with us. Let us help you share that launch story.
That's a cool idea.
Why does the feature matter? How did you twist and turn it, etc.? And I've loved how you've delivered these ads because like we started with more and now we've kind of whittled down to less. Last time I just gave you one link and like maybe a one-liner of like direction and that was it. I kind of like that because it's like, well, I don't want it to be my voice. You don't want it to be my voice or their voice. We just want it to be the news like normal. So that's the rough economics I wanted to share because it might be a bit until we have that sponsored, but we do have Changelog News sponsored. And it's important for us to have the listener first approach. I mean, every conversation I'm in, hey, we're listener first. What does that mean? Well, if our listeners don't like it or won't like it, then we're not going to do it. That's what that means.
Right. Yeah, so I would love to have feedback on the news sponsorship from our listeners. What do y'all think about how we're going about that? It's right in there in the mix. It's like another news story, which means it's brief. I try to keep it as similar to the other ones as possible. Of course, it's also in the newsletter as a story of very similar content. But we are experimenting. We are trying new things. We want it to be valuable for everybody. Of course, plus people are like, what are you guys talking about? There's a news sponsorship? There's sponsors in Changelog News? Because they've never heard one before.
It's better.
That's right. They're like, liars.
Yeah. So there's that. But yeah, I would love feedback on that, and specifically how we're doing with that. Because it is experimental. We don't know exactly what's best for everybody involved. So I like the idea of launch with Changelog News. Because it's like, hey, here's some big news we have. You know, we're willing to pay some money to get it out there. So that's a good idea.
We got a new course coming out. We got a new thing happening over here. We're going to be at this event. Just something that is worth sharing. And those may not have been the best examples, but something worth sharing, I guess, is the point. And, you know, we've also priced it to the point where it's like, it's a can't say no price, in my opinion. All that to say is that we do have to pay the bills. And so sometimes you got to do the cha-ching.
That's right.
Like you do in the news show, which I love. That's cool. You got to pay the bills.
So Changelog and Friends. This is your introduction. This is not what the show will be. I mean, I guess it isn't so far as it's you and I talking, but we'll have things to talk about. We'll have friends with us. If you enjoyed the episode, by the way, called Get With Your Friends with Matt Ryer, that was the prototype. That was the test, the private public beta for Changelog and Friends. Like that is the idea where it's like, let's get a friend of ours, Matt Ryer from GoTime. Let's get a topic, which is like cool Git tools. And let's just hang out and talk about it. And I know people like that because we got a lot of feedback on that episode.
Mm-hmm.
I listened back to it. I enjoyed it. Obviously, Matt is a hoot. Not all of our friends are as unfunny as Matt is.
Right.
I don't want to give him too. His head's big enough as is. It'll explode if we keep talking about him. But maybe we overshot. Maybe that one was too good for a typical Changelog and Friends. I don't think so. I think we can bring the heat. And so expect things like that.
Nah, you got to give a mountaintop, right? I feel like that's what it was. Songs. There were songs in that one. It's definitely different than what I would expect every other one to be that doesn't have Matt on it. But
right,
that was the idea. And we did the With Friends.
Matt's ready to come back on. He even asked me the other day, he's like, can we do another show? I'm like, yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah. I said, get a topic. We're ramping up for our talk show.
We're prepping.
So he'll be on. I think we'll have just a few people that people can expect. You can definitely expect Gerhard to hang around. You can expect Matt Ryer. I think you can expect Mike McQuaid will be on coming soon.
Mm-hmm. Simon Willison, I'm sure he'll be back.
Simon Willis will be back. I think Justin Searles is interested in hanging out and talking now that he's back. He's an IC once again. He put himself back into the driver's seat of his own code editor, and he's back at IC. He's no longer running the show over there at Test Double. So he has more time on his hands in terms of being able to contribute to stuff like this. That's just a small list of people that we think we'll see recurring. Many others, JS Party panelists, of course.
Maybe a debate even. A non-recurring friend,
Absolutely. Debates. It's going to be good. So let us know what you think. Obviously, you don't know what you think yet because you haven't heard the show yet. But here's the idea. Changelog and Friends talk show. It's part of the Changelog feed. So this is like a flavor of the Changelog podcast. On Monday, you get your news. Wednesday, you get your interview. Friday, you get your talk. It also will exist, just like news does now, as its own separate podcast called Changelog and Friends. And so if you just want talk shows from us,
yep,
have at it. Also, if you hate all this new stuff we've been trying out and you really like our interviews still, there is a separate feed called Changelog Interviews, which is just our Wednesday interview show. And so if you hate all of these new fangled episode formats we're doing, but you just want to keep the OG interview show in your podcast app, we'll meet you there as well. I think that feed exists, but hasn't been submitted to the indexes yet. So
Yeah, it's possible.
it's not quite out there, but it'll get out there.
Right.
We've created the infrastructure for all three to have their own feeds. And then the regular Changelog feed that everybody knows and loves has all three shows in it.
That's right. So if you're subscribed, do nothing. Or if you want less, do something.
That's right. If you're listening to this, you probably already are subscribed to the Changelog because this is episode 1 of Friends, and there's no way anybody's subscribed to that. I guess in the future they might be and go back and want to hear.
Yeah. I loved how we got the word friends in the Matt show.
Yeah.
Get with your friends. Like that to me was the best, really, because like we had this thing we were cooking up behind the scenes and we didn't tell anybody, obviously. And
Right.
now we are. And that show was blatantly named Get with Your Friends. Not Get. If you got to go back to listen to the episode. Get.
Not Dan Tan.
Oh my gosh. Dan Tan. Dan Tan. That was a hoot, man. People love that too. That was a lot of fun. Like just people probably want to hear more of you, maybe a little bit more of me. And we don't give them any of us. You know, we just only ask questions and
Right.
occasionally put our opinions in there as we ask another question on the interview show. My long-winded questions, as you told me in Vancouver recently.
Oh, you took that personally.
Nah, just remembered it is all.
Just remembered it. Yeah.
Made a note.
Sometimes, I'll say this because we're here amongst friends. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes Adam's questions, especially on Founders Talk, they take a while to percolate. He circles the wagon a few times before he lays it out there. And he asked me for feedback, and I gave him that. So
Got to provide that context. And I was happy with the feedback.
yeah.
I just am sharing the note here with everybody else now.
Now everybody knows that, I think.
Now everybody knows. That's okay, though. Well, if you go back and listen to the show we just shipped today, which is literally Wednesday, May 17th,
Sarah Drasner.
with Sarah Drasner, on there, we were talking about engineering management.
Yeah.
I said, Jared, who do I manage? Who do we manage? And you're like, well, I think we manage each other. So that's kind of like that, you know,
Yeah, pretty much. We manage each other
to some degree.
to some degree.
But hey, I'm excited about Changelog and Friends. I'm excited to have this talk show, this thing with a workflow, really, to get a Friday show out there every week that has some variety, has some fun, has some, you know, a current to it in terms of like being timely, you know, some timeliness to it, you know, it's right now, you know, and I love that. Like a Tuesday to Friday is not a long wait. A Wednesday to a Wednesday is a long wait to ship
Yeah.
something.
The only challenge is like, what happens when like breaking news hits on Wednesday? You know, it's like, dang it, we recorded yesterday. It ships on Friday. We're gonna sound like dummies.
Yeah, that's quite possible.
We need to turn it around faster. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, maybe we might have to.
That's just part of it. I mean, what are you gonna do? You
Yeah.
can't record daily. Oh, by the way,
That's the nature of the beast.
our initial idea for news was a daily thing, wasn't it? That's the other thing that changed. Was like,
Oh gosh,
We
no.
could-
Was it daily?
yeah,
It was 3 times a week.
maybe it was 3 times a week. Honestly, Changelog News plus the newsletter, it wears me out. That sucker wears me out. By the end of the day, I do that on Monday. I get done. And I'm just like, if I had to do that every day or even 3 times a week,
Yeah.
it would not sustain no matter how much money we made. It's just, it's a lot.
Can I be honest with you?
I wouldn't have it any other way.
I am somewhat dreading your next vacation.
Just skip it, man. Just skip the episode.
Just skip it, man. You can't do that. You can't do that. I'll probably spend Saturday, Sunday, and Monday shipping it on Monday.
It's a lot.
I'm kind of kidding. Yeah, it's a lot.
The last, I guess we've done it 5. I've done it 5 times this way. By the way, so the other thing that changed for us, so this is internal again, is the website has changed. It's simplified. It's not like a feed on the homepage. For the longest time, we had this new stuff fresh on the homepage
Right.
daily, multiple times a day. And that was very much a hamster wheel. And so part of this change from weekly to news in terms of the newsletter is that we wanted to escape that hamster wheel just a little bit. And so we're not writing on the website daily. We're actually just writing once a week for the newsletter. We're collecting, we're reading. Maybe we write ahead of time.
The way we used to do it.
Mondays, yeah, exactly. Well, even back then we had a Trello board that was doing more work and stuff.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a real-time publish.
It had some sections that were finished, but anyways, now it's like on Monday is when the writing happens and then the recording and the audio and everything. And so that's made the rest of my week nice and chill in terms of watching the news, writing about the news. I don't feel like I'm pressured to do things daily, but it just means if I don't do things, I still have to work on it throughout the week because otherwise Monday is just going to be way overwhelming. I've done it 5 times and I'm trying to get it out by noon and I just don't think it's actually possible because I've tried really hard. This week was I went out to breakfast with my mom for Mother's Day, so I was like an hour later than usual. But even if I get up and just work on it straight through, 2 o'clock is like the earliest I've been able to do it. I would love to get it out by noon. I think I have to write it on Friday or something. Anyways, inside baseball. It's just a lot of work.
It's a lot of work creating the workflows and the systems and the habits even to create content at a clip for 14 plus years, really.
Yeah.
So there is a way you can directly support us, by the way. Changelog.com/++. Seriously, don't have guilt about that, but that does directly support us and it does get us through the lulls and change. And there has been some change, but this new system is also, Jared alluded to it earlier, it helps us enjoy it more, but it also helps us package it better. We've already seen positive feedback from various brands we work with that like the simplification. Like, let me just buy all 3, that kind of thing. Or let me just start with news to learn how to trust you and see that you're going to do good by me or understand my story and help me share that with developers in a way that, helps them understand who we are and gets their attention, but also just moves that ball a little forward. Let me buy more now. Okay, great. And that's been a positive thing for us. So I'm happy about that already for us. So Changelog and Friends coming to you on a Friday.
That's right.
What else?
I guess one last thing in terms of actual content for Friends, we're of course taking requests. We do have that request form. It's on the website, changelog.com/request. And by the time you're listening to this, Changelog and Friends will be a drop-down option there. Probably already is, actually. It's in the system as a draft or as a coming soon podcast. So I would definitely love to hear ideas on cool things to talk about. What do you want us to talk about? Who do you want us to have on the show to talk about such things? We're open for getting multiple guests on. It doesn't have to be like one person every time. We could have a topic about, a broad sweeping thing, maybe with people who have different projects in that category. So lots of different opportunities to talk about different things. And we're going to be putting out a weekly show. So we're seeking your ideas and your desires. Who do you want to hear from? What do you want to hear about? Changelog.com/request. Select Changelog and Friends from the dropdown and holler at us. We'll definitely listen and read all of those.
What are you looking forward to most from this, Jared? Number one thing.
Experimenting. I just like the idea of having fun with it. I'm going to be mastering this show once we get it up and running. And so just like adding cool extras.
It's all about putting on a show.
Pulling in cool stuff, making it fun to listen to. That's what I'm looking forward to most. What about you?
I think getting to convene with our friends more often. I think the last time we did the Get With Your Friends episode with Matt Ryer, you talked to him more often than I do because you work with the Go Time team more often than I do.
Yeah.
And I think it had been at least a couple years since I had seen him or talked to him.
That's one of the things that I notice is like when we have people back on the Changelog, we're always like, it's been 6 years. It's been 7 years.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. I'm not sure. We could probably fix that on the Changelog, but there's so many things to talk about. We get 50 interviews a year, and you want to give new voices opportunities. So you don't want to like go back to the same people all the time. But yeah, I think that's going to be awesome.
Just as an example, like Corey Doctorow, we can get him on for an Friends episode, and we can say, hey, Corey, who else should we have on that isn't a friend of ours? You're a friend of ours. Who would you like to bring on with you to like talk?
Bring one of your friends.
Yeah, exactly. And, talk at length about some of these like high pressing. Now that may be a challenging one because Corey is quite prolific in his writing as well as his speaking. He's got lots to say and you want to listen.
As one listener said, we only said 3 words the whole episode. That's what one person said.
We didn't get that many. That's true. But we did say a lot. So that may be an ambitious and Friends episode in the fact that Corey has a lot to say. And he, usually when he's talking, it's things that people don't get to hear too often because, I don't know, he thinks differently than we do.
I said chicken eyes reverse centaurs and he went off for like 15 minutes. I was like, wow.
Yeah. It was a good 20 minutes later. And he's like, that was a long-winded version of what is a reverse chicken eye centaur.
I didn't realize there was so much depth in that term. I just thought it was a cool thing.
So much compression.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm looking forward to is like, these folks we get to meet, and I think we now call friends, getting them back on the show in a way that doesn't have to be, okay, well, tell me about the project you've done for the last 5 years that has, not much change or nothing really worth coming back on because that story's been kind of told already.
Right.
Because that kind of sucks, Like even like I was thinking with Dwayne O'Brien recently, we haven't had him back on because the Fox Contributor Fund is kind of baked.
Right.
Can we have him back on to be like, okay, tell us more about it? Well, I already told you, just go back and listen to the last show we did together. That might be an example where it's like, well, we didn't talk to Dwayne for several years because there wasn't much change there. So that's what I'm encouraged by is the ability to talk to our friends more frequently. Bring some of that hallway track stuff, that reserved gold that you find only at conferences in the hallways. Kind of bring that atmosphere to this show. This hallway track meets talk show meets game show meets, recurring segments, all the fun stuff.
That reminds me, I forgot all about this. The working tagline, which we've been kind of spitballing or workshopping for this, is what if your favorite conference's hallway track was on repeat all year round? That's the vibe. I love that.
Yeah.
I've had a hard time actually wordsmithing that into like a sentence that sounds good, but that vibe is what I love to capture with this.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's do it, man.
Let's do it.
Let's make it happen.
You're still here. I don't blame you. This track is a banger. BMC, never gonna let us down. So here's the new plan. News on Mondays, interviews on Wednesdays, and Friends on Fridays. On the next Changelog and Friends, we're Kaizening with Gerhard Lazu. After that, we'll be reacting to Apple's WWDC keynote with Mike McQuaid. And after that, we'll be hanging out with Matt Ryer talking about I don't know what. That's all for now. We'll be back with the news on Monday.